Well, my name is Paul Glastris. I am from, obviously, this area. We moved here from Kirkwood in 1969, and I graduated Parkway West in 1997. My family always wanted to, most of my family was closer into the city. My dad's business, our church was there. We never really wanted to, my parents didn't want to live out here. It was the country back then. But it turned out they could get more house for the money, and the schools were very good. And it turned out to be a very, very smart move on their part, because we had the benefit of going to what's probably one of the top schools, certainly school districts in the region. And it was a wonderful place to grow up. And I think the more you look back on your life, the more you realize that you were oriented toward what you ultimately did by where you grew up. This was Parkway West was a fabulous school, surrounded by woods and fields and creeks. And I grew up in the afternoons fishing in the creeks and the ponds and stalking the woods and BB guns, very Mark Twain kind of background. But then going to this high school with these wonderful teachers that had PhDs and were literate and had seen the world. And St. Louis can be a very conservative, settled place. But at Parkway West, I think we, thanks to Al Burr's genius, had an influx of teachers who, I think, from the 60s, had a kind of an idealism and a focus on education. These are people who might, in a different era, have gone on to investment banking or dot-com entrepreneurs, but for them, teaching was the great profession. And so everyone has a handful of teachers that they remember really influencing them. For me, it's more than a dozen that I can think of, from Melba James to Lane Page, Polly Kennedy, Larry Matthews, Roland Klein, Dennis Mullins, all these people. And they really broadened your horizon, and they brought with them a sense of what was happening in the country at the time, very socially conscious. And so I think at Parkway West, I got a combination of sort of very basic conservative Midwest values with a kind of progressivism from my teachers that sent me off with a lot to think about and a kind of broader horizons than I might otherwise have had. And over the years, I drifted from college to journalism in Washington, D.C. and the whole political world, and spent about 10 years with U.S. News and World Report magazine, traveled the country and the world with them, then 2.5 years working for President Bill Clinton as a speechwriter, and now editor of a small political magazine called the Washington Monthly. And I think back at especially the time I worked for President Clinton, who in some ways had a very similar background, from a kind of a heartland place, moderate and modest place, but had teachers and a kind of an outlook on life that said the whole world is your oyster, and you ought to use this opportunity you have on Earth to figure out what you can do, what history affords, what possibilities there are to get involved in the great challenges and try to make your mark and maybe push things in the right direction. And so I found, even though I'd never been a speechwriter, that the work that I had been doing as a journalist and the values and sort of rootedness but broad-mindedness that I got here at Parkway made it very easy for me to write his speeches. Not that he always used everything I gave him. He often, like all of us speechwriters, would whack away at half the stuff we gave him and go on as sort of improvise. But I found it easier because of that. And I just think that this part of the country is about as regular and representative of America as you're about to find. You're likely to find anywhere. And if you, even though I haven't lived here since I left for college, my parents are still right there on Fox Creek. I have family in the area. I'm back here half a dozen times a year. My kids have all know the area well, and I'm still very much a Cardinal fan. Alas, this year wasn't our best, heartbreaker. and I just think it's something I don't want to ever lose. And I'm just thankful for the values and the really exquisite level of education that you got at a public school on the exurban fringe of St. Louis at this wonderful time in America. It's a great gift. There are so many people that I know in Washington, D.C., literally half a dozen, just from my high school. In fact, almost all of them from my class in high school, who are all doing quite remarkable things. They're lawyers, they're federal high-level federal workers, they're working at the Library of Congress, they're working on the Hill. One of them was in the Federal Reserve. This area produced quite a lot of achievement, and it's lovely that we've been chosen as the first round, but there are a lot of others who I think are really quite an extra. My brother George is probably the most famous of the three of us. My other brother Bill is also going to be awarded something. My brother George is a world-class auctioneer, author, and the semi-regular on the Antiques Roadshow on PBS. And so there's a lot of achievement that came out of this school, and I don't know how you explain it other than the quality of what you got at Parkway. And if there's any bit of advice that I might share with the young people coming up from Parkway West is that, the ancient Greeks used to say, every man should play a musical instrument, but not too well. And what they meant by that was, try your hand at everything. Experience as much as you can. You don't have to be the world's expert, the world's champion, the pro. But sample what's available. And if you try to be perfect, right? I know that the teachers won't like me to say this, but I don't think getting all A's is the key. I sure didn't. Get A's or get the best grades you can in the things you really love. And find out what you really love. And Parkway was good about that. They had just an array of things to do. For me, it was science, it was drama, soccer at an earlier age. You learn through these activities what you're actually good at, what you enjoy doing. High school is really the time you begin to figure that out. And because of the era in which we live, where very, very high performance can be very well rewarded, what's more important than anything is to figure out what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. Because you'll never be first rate at something you don't enjoy. So though it's important to get good grades, to knuckle down, to do well, it is just as important to figure out what you naturally want to do. It's at least as important a skill as any of the achievements that you're likely to be asked to do. And I know that Parkway West was a wonderful place for me to try on different things and figure out what I was good at. And I'm thankful.